She stood alone, her hands gripping the cold stone wall as mist rolled through the Highlands. Claire's heart beat slowly, like a fading drum. Jamie, her love, her anchor, was gone. No grave to visit, no final words, only silence. And a name that still echoed in her chest. But in her silence something stirred. A question. What if he wasn't truly gone? Claire Fraser, the healer from another time, had faced war, death, and heartbreak. But nothing had prepared her for this. The 8th season begins with a heavy, broken silence. The screen shows Claire in her old home, now too quiet, every object reminding her of Jamie. His coat still hangs by the door. His sword rests untouched on the table. His scent lingers in the air. But the man himself is missing, taken in a sudden attack, his fate unknown. The story doesn't offer peace. Instead, it throws Claire into a storm of emotion. At first, she refuses to believe Jamie is truly dead. There was no body, no blood, just a violent night, fire, and chaos. The British had raided the village and Jamie vanished in the smoke. While others said he must have fallen, Claire's heart whispers otherwise, and that whisper keeps her moving. Her grief doesn't come with tears. Claire is not just mourning. She's searching. She reads every letter, studies every map, and visits every town where a stranger might have been seen. She speaks to rebels, friends, even enemies. But clues are rare. Some say he was taken south. Others believe he was killed and buried nameless. Claire knows she's chasing shadows, but hope keeps her alive. At the same time, we see her trying to hold her world together. The family needs her. Ian watches her closely, always nearby but never sure what to say. He sees the fire in her eyes, the same fire Jamie once protected. And now Claire uses that fire to keep others safe. She treats wounded men, delivers children, and defends the Fraser name with quiet strength. But at night she sits alone reading Jamie's old letters, whispering his name like a prayer. Flashbacks come often. Claire sees Jamie's face in her dreams, hears his voice in the wind. In one scene, she returns to the stone circle, the very place that once pulled her through time. She runs her fingers across the ancient rocks, wondering if the stones could take her to him again. But the path is unclear. The magic of time is no longer reliable. And even if it worked, she has no idea where or when Jamie might be. Suddenly, a small event sparks new hope. A traveling merchant speaks of a red-haired prisoner held in a distant camp. Claire's heart races. Could it be him? She writes down every detail, her hands trembling. It might be false. It might be dangerous. But she can't ignore it. She decides to go. Claire packs lightly. She doesn't tell the others at first, only Ian. He begs to join her. She agrees and they set out quietly, riding into the fog with nothing but a name and a direction. As they ride, the story shifts from grief to determination. Claire is no longer just a lost lover. She is a woman on a mission, a woman chasing fate. Every step brings more danger. Soldiers patrol the roads. Rumors of rebellion grow stronger. And still, she moves forward. The journey becomes more than a search for Jamie. It becomes a test of everything Claire believes in: love, faith, destiny. If Jamie is alive, she will find him. If he's gone, she will bring home the truth. The section ends with Claire standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into a valley where smoke rises from a distant camp. Her eyes narrow. Her heart knows something waits below. She takes a breath and whispers, "Hold on, Jamie, I'm coming." The Highlands were never truly quiet, but now even the wind carried a warning. As Claire and Ian journeyed deeper into the north, they entered a land heavy with secrets. It wasn't just the British they had to fear anymore. A new power was rising, one born from old grudges and long-buried betrayals. In a nearby village, burned cottages and scattered belongings told a silent story. No soldiers, no bodies, only ashes and fear. Locals spoke in whispers about a man named Lord Braith, once a minor noble, now a ruthless warlord. He had taken advantage of the chaos, left by the British retreat, and filled the gap with his own army, made up of outlaws, deserters, and angry clansmen. He didn't care for crowns or causes, only power. Claire hadn't heard his name in years. Lord Braith's family had once sided against the Frasers, bitter about land disputes and broken marriage deals. But now he had returned, stronger, crueler, and with a twisted goal to erase the name Fraser from the Highlands entirely. As Claire and Ian pressed on, they began to feel the reach of Braith's grip. Villagers loyal to the Frasers were disappearing. Farms with ties to Jamie were being burned. At night, campfires flickered on distant hills, signaling movements no one could explain. Claire knew they were being watched, but the watchers remained, just out of reach. Meanwhile, in the future timeline, danger was rising for Brianna and Roger too. Back in their own time, they had hoped for peace and a chance to raise their children safely. But strange signs had begun to appear. Letters with no sender, news clippings with hidden messages and symbols carved into the old trees near their home. Roger believed someone from the past had followed them through time, and they weren't here as friends. Brianna, sharp and brave, began to trace the clues. One name kept appearing, linked to Braith's line. Could it be that someone in their time was working to change the past? Was someone trying to rewrite history, to erase the Frasers not just from the Highlands but from the timeline itself? Back in the 18th century, Claire and Ian found a secret rebel camp. A few of Jamie's old allies had gathered there, hiding in the woods. Their leader was a fiery woman named Moira MacLeod, once close to the Fraser clan. She told them the truth. Braith had captured Jamie. He was alive, but being moved from camp to camp, a symbol meant to crush Fraser hope. Moira had tried to mount a rescue, but Braith's men were everywhere. They were brutal, silent, and used Highland magic and old myths to scare off rebels. Some believed they had help from ancient forces. Others thought it was just clever fear tactics. Claire didn't care. All she knew was Jamie was alive, and Braith was using him as bait. With Moira's help, Claire and Ian joined the rebels. They trained by firelight, rode at night, and spread word through secret paths. But every move was dangerous. One mistake meant death or worse, and yet something strange began to happen. Claire noticed her presence caused fear among Braith's men. Rumors were spreading. The healer from another world had returned. Some said she could speak to spirits. Others claimed she could not be killed. Claire didn't believe in such stories, but she didn't correct them either. If fear gave her power, she would use it. One night, after a narrow escape from a patrol, Ian turned to Claire and said, "They think you're a ghost, a woman who walks through time." Claire smiled, tired and cold. "Let them," she replied. But behind her brave face, she knew time was running out. Braith was planning something big, something meant to end the Frasers forever. And Jamie's life was the key. If they didn't act soon, the next fire they saw might be Jamie's last. The section closes with Claire staring at a map lit by candlelight. She draws a circle around a dark forest called the Witch's Hollow, the place Braith's men were last seen. She taps the map gently and whispers, "That's where they're keeping him." The night was quiet, but Claire couldn't sleep. The stars above the Highland sky reminded her of a truth she could never escape. She wasn't born here. She wasn't meant to belong to this century. Time had pulled her in once, twisted her fate, and given her Jamie. But now, it felt like time itself was slipping through her fingers, and for the first time she feared the stones might not listen anymore. Back in the modern day, Brianna stared at a dusty old journal found inside a hidden compartment of Lallybrock's walls. The handwriting was old, older than it should have been. It was Roger's ancestor writing about events he couldn't have lived through. Unless he had time traveled. The words hinted at a future destroyed by one change in the past, and then one sentence chilled her to the core. The Fraser line must survive. He cannot die there. Who was he? Jamie. Roger. The warning wasn't clear, but it was urgent. Claire, meanwhile, kept having dreams, vivid and surreal. In one, she stood at Craig na Dun, the stones humming, not with power, but with pain. They pulsed like a heartbeat, faster and louder. In another, she saw Jamie standing in the fog, reaching for her, but time bent between them like rippling water. Each time she reached out, he disappeared. Ian noticed her restlessness. He asked if she wanted to return to the stones. Claire shook her head. "They don't feel right," she said. "Like something's broken. Like time is trying to stop me." Still, fate kept pulling her back to the past. In a ruined church, Claire found a carved stone hidden beneath the altar. On it was a strange symbol, one she'd seen only once before, etched into the standing stones at Craig na Dun. It was an old druid mark, one tied to time travel. Beside it, words were scratched in Latin: Tempus non est amicum, time is not your friend. The moment she touched the symbol, a flash of memory hit her, Jamie's voice calling out weak and distant. It wasn't a memory. It felt real, like an echo bouncing through time. Claire fell to her knees, gasping, her hands trembling. Time wasn't a door anymore. It was a maze, and someone, or something, was changing the paths. Meanwhile, Roger returned to the stones in their time, carrying the old journal and a worn map. He noticed something different this time. The air around the stones felt thick, heavier than before. The wind didn't blow through. It circled, and for a moment, he thought he heard Jamie's name whispered on the breeze. Brianna joined him. They both realized what had to be done. The stones were growing unstable. Someone was tampering with time. Maybe Lord Braith's bloodline, maybe something worse. They had to warn Claire, but could they risk going through again? Back in the past, Claire received a letter. It had no sender, no seal, just her name written in a hand she didn't recognize. Inside, a short message. "The stones remember. You must not change what was already broken." Was it a warning? A trap? Or a riddle from the future? Claire's doubt grew, but so did her resolve. She believed Jamie's capture, Braith's rise, and the trembling of the stones were all connected. She began to piece together a pattern, certain places in the Highlands where the stones seemed to sing louder, certain dates where time bled into itself. She marked them all, forming a strange shape on the map, a spiral, leading straight to Braith's camp. It was no longer just about rescue. If time itself was shifting, then saving Jamie wasn't just about love. It was about balance. If Jamie died out of place or time, something terrible could follow. Maybe the end of the Fraser bloodline, or a future where none of them existed at all. The section ends with Claire walking alone at dawn toward Craig na Dun. She doesn't plan to travel. Not yet, but she needs to listen. She places her hands on the stone, closes her eyes, and whispers, "If you can hear me, show me the way." The stone hums, soft, slow, alive. And then, for the first time in a long time, it answers. The sky bled red over the Highlands. A storm was coming, not of wind or rain, but of steel and fury. Claire stood with Ian on a cliff's edge, staring down at Braith's fortress hidden deep in Witch's Hollow. Smoke rose from its chimneys like breath from a sleeping beast, and inside that beast yet was Jamie. But time was no longer on their side. Moira MacLeod, the rebel leader, had returned with a grim message. Lord Braith was preparing to move Jamie. Rumor said he planned to execute him during a public gathering meant to crush any resistance. A show of power, a final blow to the Fraser name. "We have 3 days," Moira said, "before they put him in chains and make an example of him." Claire didn't speak. She just nodded once. The plan wasn't about strategy anymore, it was about love. And revenge. Over the next 2 days, the rebel camp buzzed with preparation. Hidden blades were sharpened, paths were scouted, messages sent through coded signals. Claire stitched herbs into bandages and tucked scalpels into her coat. She was not just a healer now. She was a weapon. On the final night, Ian brought her a gift, a small silver dagger once owned by Jamie's father. "He'd want you to carry it," Ian said. Claire took it silently, her fingers closing around the handle as if she were holding Jamie's hand. Meanwhile, in the future, Brianna stood in front of the stones with Roger and their children. She had made a choice. "If she fails," she said, "we may lose everything." With a deep breath, she touched the stone and vanished. Roger followed. Time split again. In Witch's Hollow the night before the execution, a cold fog rolled over the ground. Braith's men stood guard, half drunk, overconfident. They didn't see the shadows moving through the trees. They didn't hear the whisper of arrows or the silent signals passed between rebels in the dark. Claire moved like a ghost. She had memorized the camp's layout from Moira's maps. Her heart pounded as she crept into the lower prison. Every step felt like a lifetime, and then she saw him. Jamie was chained, bruised, but alive. His eyes were closed, lips cracked, hair matted. Claire fell to her knees beside him, whispering his name. His eyes fluttered open. "Sassenach," he breathed, voice raw but full of love. "I knew you'd come." But their moment was short. Alarms rang out. Someone had seen the rebels. Ian burst into the prison with 2 swords, tossing one to Jamie. "No more waiting," he said. "It ends tonight." What followed was chaos. Swords clashed, guns fired, smoke clouded the air. The rebels fought like wolves, not to win a war, but to protect a name. Braith himself entered the fray, tall and cruel in black armor. He faced Jamie in a brutal duel, blade to blade, rage to rage. Claire fought too, protecting the wounded, saving lives. She didn't flinch when blood splashed across her face. She moved from man to man, never stopping, never crying. She had one goal: get Jamie out alive. In the final moments, Jamie struck Braith down, but not before Braith stabbed him deep in the side. Claire screamed, rushing to Jamie as he collapsed. "Don't you dare," she whispered, pressing her, hands to the wound. "You are not dying, not now." Brianna arrived through the trees at that exact moment, out of breath, tears in her eyes. She knelt beside them, helping her mother close the wound. "We're here," she said. "We're all here." As the sun rose, the rebels held the field. Braith's army scattered. The Fraser name stood tall once more. But victory had its cost. Moira died in the battle. So did many others. The camp was quiet now, filled with mourning and memories. Claire sat beside Jamie, bandaging his wounds. He looked at her, tired but smiling. "I always knew you'd find me," he whispered. She kissed his forehead. "I didn't come alone." The season closes with the Frasers, Claire, Jamie, Brianna, Roger, Ian, standing together on the edge of the Highlands. Behind them, fire and loss. Ahead of them, uncertain peace. And above them, the stones wait. Silent again, but watching. Claire turns to the camera, her voice calm but heavy. "Love can survive time, but it never survives untouched." Fade to black.